Definitely. For me, the problems of the justice sector relate to three key issues. Resources. I think the justice sector is severely underfunded. Management. I think that our judicial officers don't have the skills that are required to manage the justice sector properly. And I'll elaborate on that in a bit. And then third, I think that we need to address the entry point into our justice sector. Because as I say to people, a lazy, corrupt, and not particularly smart lawyer is not suddenly going to transmute and become a smart, hardworking, intelligent judge. Just that kind of magic doesn't happen. So, if we look at the history of our justice sector and of our judiciary, I mean, Nigerian judges used to be export products. People would go from our Court of Appeal and go and be made chief justices somewhere because they were so good. And when you look at who those people were, the Justice Ayolas of this world, Justice Kayode Esho, I mean, the great names, these people were the best of the bar that went to the bench. Over the years, somehow that trend has reversed. So it's not the best of the bar that is going to the bench, and we're seeing the result in the level of dysfunctionality in our justice sector. So those are the three aspects of justice sector reform that I would like to focus on. One is judges are not in a position to agitate for more resources, or maybe not to agitate as effectively as the bar can. And I think that if we look at our profession as a united profession, where both judges and lawyers are members of the profession, we at the bar should take up that mantle to agitate. Recently the president passed an executive, or passed, or I don't know whether it's passed or promulgated, whatever the proper language is, Executive Order number 10, trying to enforce the provisions of the Constitution that say that the state legislatures and state judiciary should be given financial autonomy. Great idea. The concept, the intent behind that is good. I mean, question whether the federal government itself has done sufficiently well in terms of financial autonomy for the federal judiciary. But over and above financial autonomy, I think there's a challenge with the budgeting for the judiciary. Because financial autonomy, in the way in which it's being described, is that whatever has been budgeted to you, you have freedom as to how to disburse it. But how was that budget arrived at in the first place? So if the financial autonomy is over something that is grossly inadequate, it doesn't really solve the problem. I mean, we're dealing now with the aftermath of COVID. We're talking about virtual hearings. We're talking about e-filing. If the judiciary is not properly funded, all that is just talk. It's not going to happen. And the truth is, as a percentage of the country's budget, the budget for the judiciary has reduced year on year over the last maybe 15 years. So it's almost as though the government doesn't realize the importance of the role that the judiciary needs to play in a civilized society. So I think that we need to address that. And I think that our judges need to allow themselves to be assisted, which takes me to the second point about drawing a distinction between the administration of the courts and the administration of justice. The administration of justice is clearly a matter for the judges. That is entirely the exclusive preserve. But the administration of the courts, which is where the judges operate, should not really, in my view, be the exclusive preserve of the judges. They need to bring people in who are managers, who can manage the system properly. Judges are not necessarily trained to manage. And that's why our courts are so dysfunctional. I mean, you go to court and even when the judge wants to work, of course, whether the judge wants to work itself is a major problem, which we'll deal with when I talk about discipline. 8 times you go, the court is not sitting, 8 times out of 10. But even when the court is sitting, oh, they're looking for the file. They can't find the file. Oh, yes, I filed it. The litigant and the counsel has proof of service. Well, it's not in the file. So, take a date. I mean, it's ridiculous. That is all failure of management. And that is because the judges are not focusing on administering justice. Let somebody else manage the system. Let somebody else be in charge of staffing, making sure that the people that are there know what they're supposed to be doing, making sure that processes that have been filed have been served. all these things are back office things that should be done, so that by the time the judge comes to court and sits, he's assured that he's there to do judicial work, and all these hiccups will not come into play. Even what I said about budgeting, the budgeting for the judiciary should not be done by judges. It should be done by people who have financial acumen, who can plan ahead, who can tell you that, look, over the next 5 years, given the caseload in Lagos, we're going to need 300 more judges. And for 300 more judges, this is the amount of money you're going to need. So we can start budgeting, have a rolling plan. Just like you have a rolling plan for the country, you should have a rolling plan for our justice sector. But we're doing it hand to mouth, day by day. And the judges are, with the greatest respect to them, not capable of dealing with what I envision for a proper functioning justice sector. So I would like to also start that process of changing, drawing a proper distinction between the administration of the courts and the administration of justice. Even if I don't see it through in a 2-year period, if we can start that revolution, I think it will stand us in good stead. And then the third, like I said, is the entry point. I think we need to pay a lot more attention to the quality of our judicial appointments. There's nothing we can do about those who are in there already. And of course, I'm generalizing. We have quite a number of brilliant judges even now. But I think it would be dishonest to say that we're happy with the quality of all our judges. And these things all affect each other. So I think that the criteria for judicial appointments must be strengthened, and it must be enforced strictly. We're all aware of, or should be aware of, the current scandal in the FCT, where 70 judges were recommended to Mr. President for appointment. And there's an allegation that more than, or just under half of them actually don't even meet the basic criteria that are in existence at the moment for judicial appointments to a superior court. I think that's a matter for great concern. I think that those conditions should be even more stringent, but even the present conditions, it appears that they're not being met. Our judges, a significant number of our judges, I believe, I understand, are appointed based on base considerations, political connections, godfather, or related to an existing judicial officer. And that can't be the criteria for appointing judicial officers. So I think that, again, the bar must play a more active role in ensuring that it acts as a proper filter and stops this from continuing.